use the directives of the bracket and the quotation marks and the semicolon to bracket off the pattern that I want to look for. So it looks for certain kinds of directives and then plucks the pattern, which in this case is asterisk question mark title, out from the surrounding identificatory.
But what the compiler does is it sort of goes and makes up the procedures for a stupid clerk to go through and find out how many places do you find asterisk question mark TITLE.
Right, that's exactly it.
And after it's compiled, then you can tell that clerk to go do it.
Right.
So thanks for telling us.
I feel like a really stupid clerk right now. Okay, let's go off and see if it really works. We'll jump on this link. Okay, here's one coming up. It takes a little while to go through. It's going through a lot of information. You can see that there are two documents that there were problems with. Since I'm kind of the coordinator of this, I'm going to go off to the abstract and see if the title that was chosen really was appropriate. I can do that very easily. Yeah, that looks like a reasonable title, so I'll go back.
Who put that question mark in there? Somebody who entered it, right?
Right, yeah.
And they just wanted you to verify it.
That's right,
okay.
That's right. And it looks all right to me, so I'll just delete this, this query remark here. And I can do that very easily, like this. Now you'll notice that when the display is recreated, this statement up here at the top will disappear. That's because it doesn't have this pattern in it again. And the only thing on the display will be the second statement. Okay, we can go on like this with the bookkeeping. In general, we use different kinds of patterns to identify different kinds of problems. You can scan through if there's a problem with the author and the source and the date. We use the content analyzer in other ways, too, in this monitoring the information flow. For example, the system keeps track of when anybody enters a statement, the time, and the initials of the person who puts it in. We can use the content analyzer to go off and find out what's come in since the 1st of September, who put it in, what's come in from a specific installation. Now, there are other kinds of questions that we're asking of this file, other kinds of information that we want to get out. And this is very difficult to describe. It's what you do when you go to a library. You search, perhaps, for a document by subject, and the subject can be pretty much anything, of the content of the document, the author, etc. The best way to show you how we're trying to facilitate this is by an example. For example, as Doug mentioned, one of the main things that we're interested in here from the systems programming point of view is the use of languages and compiler writing. Now, Utah, the University of Utah, is interested in this also. And so I might want to come in and compare what we've written with whatever it is that Utah has written. I have a keyword system set up in this file, similar to the one that Bill Paxton was telling you about. And in this keyword system, we can easily get out the documents that came from an installation just by entering the installation name. If you'll look up in the upper right-hand corner now of my screen, you can see I've typed in SRI for a keyword. I'm going to type in Utah now. I'm just selecting keywords. And these keywords correspond to the installation from which I want to collect the documents. We'll execute the keyword now. And let me turn on statement number so you can see. Now this is what the keyword system has told me are all of the documents from Utah and SRI. You can see that they've been reordered.
Utah or SRI?
Yeah, right. Either one. Now, that's a lot of documents to look through, and I'm really only interested in languages. So what I want to do is apply the content analyzer to these titles to pluck out the things that have to do with languages. So let me turn on a statement that I have frozen here, which I use a lot in this file if I'm creating content analyzer patterns. And let me just make up a pattern. I want to look for compilers, so I'll type in compilers and give the content analyzer the right ending mark. We'll execute this pattern. Okay, and now we'll turn it on. And the content analyzer now is scanning through the things that I originally ordered by keywords to
And if
find...
there was any confusion, we should say that the content analyzer work now is the stupid clerk that we said. It's been told what to look for, now it's looking.
Whoops. I think I may have goofed. There may not be anything in there that has to do with compilers. Let's see if it has anything about just a compiler. So I'll just delete the S there. Okay, and turn things back on. Okay, let's get the keywords back. Okay, and now then let's try and execute this pattern. Whoops.
Might have been language.
Let's see. Okay, let's try language, Doug.
Replace word.
Right.
Yeah. You're giving us a fine demonstration of the flexibility of the system, Mary.
Right. Have to get the keywords back here again. Okay, let's try this. Okay. And with any luck at all, right, there we go. We've got some languages and compilers. Guess that's all it found. Okay, now if I were really pursuing this further, I could jump on a link here and go look at the abstract, because you'll remember we've organized this file so that the abstracts are hidden. You can go off on a hidden link on the abstracts. This is just an example of the way we're trying to telescope in on information, come back out, look at things in a bigger way, go back in another direction. That's about all I wanted to show, Doug. Do you have any questions?
Well, I don't. I'm trying to think if the audience would. That was very good. I think, Mary, what we're beginning to show them is simple, straightforward techniques that are simple in concept, executed smoothly with good tools. But when you have the tool like this computer responding instantly, it gives you a very different domain from what you'd expect if you just describe to someone that I can follow cross-references,
right,
or I can make a hierarchy, or look at it to different depth, or edit quickly.
Mm-hmm.
These things all begin to add. You can compose and modify your searching patterns very quickly. The things you find you can inspect very quickly. If they satisfy you, you could copy them into someplace else and integrate them into your notes very quickly. Okay, let's get on. Thanks very much, Mary. What a contrast between faces. One thing that we've long waited for in our program over the years, in this thing we call bootstrapping, where we're developing tools to help ourselves, is that we can help our own management activities. As we've grown in size and complexity over the years, we've gotten real binds, and we feel greatly lucky that last spring a man named Jim Norton came to work for us and piled in tremendously. And without having too many tools that were really specially organized for the manager, he's gone in and started doing some very interesting things to the kind of files we use now to help ourselves manage. So let's bring him in to the screen. Next we're going to see Jim Norton. Aren't we? What could I say that wouldn't steal the thunder from Jim? I think you'll find he's going to... Hi, Jim, do you hear us? We can't hear you, Jim. Hey, wave your hand if you can hear me. All right, we can't hear you yet.
I'm ready now.
Oh, all
I'm
right.
on. I'll put your bug on with me.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Well, I'd like to tell you about...
Well, we don't have your text up on the screen yet, Jim.
Oh, I see.
There it comes. Okay.
Good.
Fine.
I'd like to tell you about some of the ways that we're trying to use this online system for managing and coordinating the activities within the center. Our applications of this system to center management are specialized, and they relate to our needs. But we feel that they may have some implications for others involved in coordination of efforts. And all of us are managers at one time or another, whether we realize it or not, either managing our own time, resource allocation, or the efforts of others. And when we do, we find it's very helpful to have fast access to the information that helps us make decisions, to communicate important things to people. In using this system for management of the center, some of the obvious things that we'd be getting into are shown here in the screen: financial data, personnel, status of different activities. I'd like to go into another file and talk about working with numbers. When we started, we put most of the important information, much of it numerical, into the system regarding our finances and our future plans. And it was quite apparent that we needed some help in summarizing this information. So a calculator has been developed online. I thought I'd show you how that works to start. We do that by giving it the execute calculator command, and with the zeros are what are contained in the register when you start. After the decimal, these three places aren't really necessary for me, so I'm going to set them to 0. I thought I'd start off just by trying to show you how we can add a simple column. I might say also that we can add, subtract, multiply, divide, commands coming above in the command feedback area. Now we'll add these figures here. And we can insert the answer down at this point. Clear the accumulator. We can add this column, which is a column of numbers with different decimals digits after the decimal. And I can change that if I want to see all. Let's go back a space. See all 3 points and insert that at this point. But just adding columns and numbers isn't really enough to solve some of our problems. We can try a series of things, backing into the calculator. We can add 15 to multiply by 36 and divide by 17 and subtract 32. Cut down some of those to 4. We can insert the answer at this point. But if we went through this sequence very many times, we wouldn't want to have to remember each time when to add and when to multiply and divide. So we have made it possible to write a little function that describes the relationships of numbers like those. And this is at the bottom of the screen is a function. And we can pick that function, and it will simply start asking for different values in it. And I can put in the values that we just had above. See if we get the same answer. Good. And this has been very helpful in summarizing financial information. Now with that tool, and with combination of the other tools, features that you've heard about, I use this file called funds as my basic file for keeping track of the detailed cost information. We can look at this branch, actual cost summary by project, and we can look at all the levels under it. We can go to a successor and have a link to a really detailed cost history, or to the next. And these files are things that I interact with just about every day. Now going back to our outline. Well, let's see. I think we should take one quick look at another feature in that file. One of the things that we're keeping track of is the time of our staff members. And we're attempting to combine tabular data and charts in a way that we can interact with the two forms of expression. We can look at some charts. Here's one chart of project hours over 1969 so far in percentages. And the data upon which this is based is contained in this section. And if I'm working with it and I want to go back to look at the chart or back to the data, I can go back and forth quite easily. We also use this in the personnel area. We can go into part of that file that talks about personnel. Shows that we have 21 people in our center plus 3 that we borrow, and plans for adding some. Now, if I wanted to say of this, who's in this list, I can jump to, except I didn't.
In spite of all the navigational aids, you got lost.
Right. I'm back. I can open up another level and see the list of people contained in this total of 21. I can go down through it and see the rest. Now, let's say I'm interested in which people are involved with software. I can find a pattern that I can use the content analyzer on.
Why don't you tell our librarian what software means?
All right. And I can see out of that list just those people that are involved in software. Or I can say, well, what about...
Software means they're a programmer.
Sorry. What about those people that are interested in, well, that are senior professionals by categorization here? I go back to the outline we've been following. You can also use this to have links into other activities that are going on. I have one file that I use for my personal notes from day to day called JPlan, talking about the kind of things that we're doing these days. I have another file having to do with the status of our recruiting and what openings we have and how things are going there. I have another file that it links into the activities in what we call a support system, those people that are particularly oriented towards supporting the others in the center. And in that, I can look at current tasks, open up a level, and see that these are some of the people involved in this activity. And I can say, well, let's see, Dave Cazares, what's he working on these days? And he keeps a file that I can link into to get an idea of how things are going there. We can go back through these files that we've been coming through to the outline. And one other file that I have is my file directory, and in it I keep links just to other people's file directories that aren't pointed at because of a specific interest. And I can go there for information. And to conclude, it's clear to me that there are many things that we can do in the future to extend this. That's very exciting. That was what I had to talk about, Doug.
That's good. I enjoyed that, Jim, and I think it gives another example of the everyday use we have, in which many of the basic same tools and conventions for organizing material applied to a different kind of data, but giving the same sort of versatility and freedom and moving around. And then he's introduced another little function, this calculator that can make his work go faster when he needs to manipulate some numbers. And we'll find this really in our continued evolution to be more and more general. The basic tools for moving around inside the information are becoming ever more flexible, and we kind of arrived at a nice plateau where we can start adding more and more special functions to help ourselves when we need special tools in different kinds of disciplines and different kinds of information. And we've got a few more of these now, and more will come. And we find that it just snows people completely if too many of these things come tumbling on them at once. But I'd like to go on to another little example then for ourselves. And we're going to be taking on a little list like this now. But there's a file sitting there that was organized just since you people came. The information in it was what was accumulated. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. We have signals that we can set for each other like that. All right. So, set up there with all the patterns and all the material on beyond it if you wish to see it. So they provided me with different patterns that I can call in and integrate if I want to. If I want to go searching too, I can find that there are lots of people's names in here. Anybody recognize themselves? Or we can look at it just to see what's the main categorization. AFG, oh, this must be alphabetic. Interesting. All right. Now, they've got the name of the person and his professional affiliation. So we can say, gee, we could get terms like center or Hewlett or interaction. We've got some components, we can make some others. Let's just try and see who all is from either a center or from Hewlett or from an interaction. So we can compile that and turn that on like that and say, Will Packer, interaction, interesting accumulation of people. Or we could go ahead and say, anything in there on housewives? Let's just see for what, shall we? I see. Right, all right. Oh, okay. I see. That's what we have. All these terms in here are terms that you will find in there. And one thing that we can do is make it easy for ourselves to compose patterns. So if I wanted to, I could say, well, let me come in here and make a given pattern for myself, and I can copy. I'll just copy a few of these things here. And into that, I'll copy, see who's from something scientific and who's from something Portola. And then we'll put in an OR in between that. We have to terminate it appropriately. And now we can say, I better get rid of these spaces. That might confuse the thing. Okay, just try. All right. So we find that either a scientific or a Portola are represented by those few people. So there are ways that we can use this in real life, and we sort of get a kick out of it. But we want to press on a little bit and try to tell you about some of the other developments we're getting involved with that are really going to tax some of our techniques a great deal. One of these is an experimental network of research computers that's becoming established over the following year from now. And they're going to use rather high-capacity telephone company interconnection links between research computers, all these sites. And the linkages, the different communication paths are going to be like this. So between SRI and MIT, one might get routed over any number of ways, depending on the traffic. And so we are going to have an interesting role in that. And let's just take a quick look at how that is provided. At every one of those nodes, there's a special purpose little computer that handles a lot of the traffic and treats the host or the research computer at that point to a very standard sort of interface. And it lets that host see the network as sort of a big box in which you can ask that interface computer to say, I would like to set up a communication link with this host X. And for all that user knows, that host computer knows, that there's a direct link set up to which you can pipe information that goes back and forth at a great rate. So many, many channels can get set up and used and thrown away that way, and that any of the people that in this network would be able to send information very rapidly to anybody else via this technique like that. We're going to have an interesting function in that oops, that all those people at all those different sites have, for the most part, time-sharing computers like ours with people sitting out, most of them, though, typing on teletypes coupled to their computers. When they want to make use of that network, they need to know what kind of special conventions to get through the network and reach the other host and then to ask for particular services. So there's a fair amount of up-to-date information he wants to have access to in order to work in that system, on that network, and we're supposed to be the library that keeps that for them. So we're going to be we're going to have files in here that are pertinent to that, and inside our time-sharing system there's a subsystem program that can be called through the network by the kind of interface subsystem that they all established there, that an individual out here can ask a computer, say, hey, couple me with our own network subsystem. Hey, subsystem, connect me with SRI. Hey, SRI's computer, connect me with your next subsystem. Okay, fine. Now I have access to your disk files and can query and search through them and make headway, or even pick them up and modify them. If we go to a subsequent picture, we can see a little bit more about what we intend to do to have in those files. We have a lot of collection of hard copy material of reports that will, and documentation for what goes on, and a fair amount of that, the part we're going to keep that we can modify, we'll call the plastic part, we'll transcribe using either of the two systems we have into computer-held files. And then the remote users, when they come through the network and into us, will make use of a subsystem we call TOTUS, Typewriter-Oriented Documentation Aid System, with which they'll be able to access the files. Any of these files you've seen us working with now, they can sit at teletypes and access. There'll be ways for them to go through the sorts of catalogs and indices that Mary Church was working on, or that Bill Paxton was working on, or indeed that Jim Norton was. That there are many of the clever ways that will let them get views out, truncated and level clipped, without numbers, indenting, things like that. You can do retrieval techniques and also have a fairly flexible means for creating or updating their own documentation. Besides that, we're going to be developing a technique, which we have in certain form already, that will provide them with a means to outputting their files to either into a film form from which they can get paper copy if they want, or we can just provide people with microform. But any of these online files can be outputted in ways that make them very adaptable to paper types of documentation. And this system here will also be able to send it to a fast printer at their place if they want it printed out. Right. Okay. So to sort of support this description of the ways we can get information out, I'd like to show you with a television camera a little bit of the different kinds of pages of material that we have output to show you some of the flexibility that's available to us, and that means we write all of our reports and proposals and documentation that is eventually going to end up in hard copy with a system. They're contained in online files and outputted. And although many of our files almost never see the light of day in the form of hard copy, very many of them do. So let's, are we ready yet to look at some of those pages for now? Good. Well, there's a page, cover page of a typical report, and we can look inside and see what the formatting looks like. That seems fairly representative, and put that out. We have means for the computer to put out either the graphics or the text as we want. We can have it indent if we wish, or not indent if we wish. And there's much we're interested in experimenting with, and the flexibility of our own online manipulations and the different kinds of views we can get on the CRTs to being also represented and put out in the hard copy that we can produce. All right, thanks very much. I think I'll just skip this final item And nope, I won't. I'll tell you just a little bit about it. We're evolving in many directions, and you may feel that the sophistication and complexity with which we can move around in structures now is sort of overdoing it. But once you've been living with it for a while, you begin to realize there's much more you could do. And we've sort of lived on a certain threshold for a while, and we're ready to move on, and we've specified some of the next stages that we're going to implement. And one of the exciting ones of these is what we call a dialogue support system, DSS. And you remember the images you had of files that you could have all the linkages between. Well, we're going to fix it so that if a file has a link pointing into it and you're scanning through it, you'll see a little mark on the side on your screen that will indicate that someplace somebody has a link pointing into this file. And if you wish, you can say who and jump back and take a look. Then we're going to adopt a convention that for a certain one area of our files, when you enter something, it's never changed anymore. You submit it to what we call our journal, and it gets put in as you would put in a transaction in an accounting journal. But then anyone subsequently can take a look at that and make comments about it in another file and enter that into the journal, and gradually there gets to be a network buildup of say, a design or a plan entry and different comments on that and comments on the comments and comments on the comments on the comments, etc., until there's a large network that really represents quite a distributed form of dialogue between the people who are sharing the burden and the problems of trying to plan and design. And then we'll have special means for going through and analyzing and seeing what the different people have contributed, so that very quickly you can sum up what have been all the comments relevant to particular aspects of this early design, so that you can quickly modify it and update it and produce a new one that goes in the journal. Well, this is a step ahead for us to become more and more of a very flexible, fast-acting team. We anticipate will begin to change the roles that we work with in each other and the ways in which we can quickly pool our attention and interest and knowledge on specific items very quickly and make decisions. And the whole role of teamwork and better management of our activity is quite appealing to us. I think summarize briefly just by saying that we've shown you a vehicle, the sort of structuring of the information through information space through which that vehicle is equipped to carry us, the types of maneuvers we can use and the sorts of trails, we can go through that, and then a bunch of the specific kinds of applications that let us take that ability to move around fast and to apply special modifications and viewing tools to help us in our system development work, in our file development work, and in our management. And we'd like to close by giving some credit to a number of people who have made this this presentation run as smoothly as it has. The 4 participants here who are recovering from their exhausting labors: Dave Evans, Bill Paxton, Mary Church, and Jim Norton. We thank you very much. Great team. And the stage manager, and hey, what happened to that? Stage manager, video mixing, audio cueing, and the man who really puts all this together in all of its technical form and really gets it working, Bill English, completely priceless and indispensable for all this activity, who's been sitting in the back running and mixing all the TV at this time. We owe a great deal for this thing working. Martin Hardy's been taking care of the video and audio controls. Camera operators there. We have Bill Duvall to the right, Chuck Irby there. Dave Castros is someplace out of sight. Thank you very much, men. Technical setup, people have been there helping Bill English very much work. Many of these people have been spending nights. Their wives will attest, I'm sure. It's really an extremely complex system that has to go together here. Someday it'll be standard technology available to everyone for the price of a car to be able to do all this. But right now it's equivalent to the 1901 automobile. Very expensive, and it's for the rich to play with. And it takes a government that says this is something worth experimenting with, that we can afford to do it. We've had a loan from McDaniel Hi-Fi of a loudspeaker. We acknowledge. Anderson Jacobs Company was very helpful in giving some extra equipment a little ahead of time. We've been very fortunate in being able to borrow this beautiful TV projector from Ames Research Lab. Thank John Dusterberry there very much for that. And Mary Caldwell, Martha Trunny, Roberta Carolon carrying on as receptionists out there. And that does. All right. And so that is the end of our little episode this evening. Thanks very much, and we'd appreciate any kind of suggestions and criticisms you might have for improving this. If you want to write them down, we'd be overjoyed. Thank you very much. And stick around, have coffee, and ask all of us questions you'd like.